Hey guys, my name is Etienne, and today I'm talking all things After Hours, and why this album, and this era, is undeniably the Weeknd's greatest achievement so far in an already prestigious and illustrious career. The first thing that stands out for me while revisiting After Hours is its premium feel. This project just oozes class from start to finish, whether it's the depth and richness of production or the ever-shining beacon of light that is Abel's voice. The combination is just pure luxury. This sounds expensive. After Hours has the ability to transcend the listener to a completely different dimension, offering some much needed escapism throughout the nightmare of 2020 and the Groundhog Day feel that continues in 2021. This is delivered through the album's unique sound, a concoction of bright 80s synth pop, nocturnal R&B, and spacey psychedelic beats. These key influences are ever present during this album, yet no track sounds exactly like another. He's managed to create a consistent atmosphere and theme without ever quite knowing what's coming next. In fact, for me, this album somehow continues to sound even better with each listen, despite being out for almost a year now. Now, no song sums this up better than the smash hit Blinding Lights. How on earth can a song that's been constantly played everywhere, over and over again, for more than a year, not just be bearable, but continue to sound fantastic? I mean, I guess that's what they call an absolute classic. A week after the release of this album, Abel and his team decided to drop a deluxe version, containing 3 new bonus tracks: Nothing Compares, Missed You, and Final Lullaby. Now for me, these 3 tracks managed to further enhance an already fantastic project, which is far from easy to achieve. For Abel to have the confidence and vision to initially leave these tracks out of the final cut, only to then release them later on, giving the album a new lease of life, was a genius move that for me has turned this project from an already impressive one to a very special one. Another reason why I believe this is the Weeknd's greatest achievement so far was his ability to seamlessly please each different subgroup of his loyal yet ever expanding fanbase. Now, whether you've been a die-hard fan of his since the day House of Balloons dropped in 2011, or you maybe only came across his work via his last album Starboy, the reaction was comprehensively positive. It was a real celebration across the board and the entirety of the EXO fanbase. And with this, Abel had managed to achieve the somewhat near impossible in striking a perfect blend and balance between his influence of old and the sounds of new. The imposing, polished and immersive production, combined with Abel's raw, vulnerable and hard-hitting vocals, are a match made in heaven, resulting in music the world clearly needed to hear. I genuinely believe that the way this album has aged already within the space of a year, that when we look back in 5 or maybe 10 years' time, After Hours will not only be a classic within Abel's discography, but it will be down as a classic in R&B and pop music universally for this current decade. As well as After Hours being the Weeknd's greatest overall performance sonically, this era has been about far more than just the music. Aesthetically, Chapter 6 has been on a different level to anything we've previously seen from Abel. As well as the music sounding expensive, there's been a real big budget feel to everything visual that has been released, ever since the first music video Heartless, all the way up until now. After Hours has seen Abel sporting a vintage look, consisting of a retro hairstyle and moustache, combined with a blood red suit jacket and some oversized glasses, seemingly inspired by Robert De Niro's character in Martin Scorsese's movie Casino. Incidentally, Scorsese also has a film called After Hours, which Abel clearly draws influence from throughout this project. The continuation of this red-suited character within the connecting music videos and live performances has given After Hours a real cinematic experience and its own ever-evolving universe. This has played a huge role in the successful longevity of this era, constantly leaving fans wanting more, wondering where the story will turn next. There have been a large number of music videos and live performances throughout the year, all perfectly leading into one another, each adding to the overall story. These visual releases have been staggered and spread out, almost as if this is a world-famous TV show, keeping fans engaged while slowly building towards an almighty crescendo in the season finale. The red-suited character has also been a great marketing tool for this album, becoming instantly recognisable to music fans across the world and catching the eye of those who don't quite know what's going on, providing a sense of mystery and intrigue. Even when looking at the album cover, we aren't quite sure whether The Weeknd is meant to be perceived as the predator or the prey. It's definitely got to the stage now, with all these music videos, live performances, and even award show appearances, that you would have had to have been living under a rock for the last year to have not seen Abel dressed as this Las Vegas nightcrawler. His look has continued to evolve with the story too, becoming more bloodied, battered and extreme as time has gone on, from a broken nose all the way to full-on plastic surgery in the latest Save Your Tears video. His commitment to this role and character arc must be applauded. The After Hours timeline is something fans will always be able to go back to and re-immerse themselves in. I found it incredibly refreshing to see a superstar strive to be so creative and play the long game, rather than just shoot a cliché, overdone music video full of models, money and chains, resulting in very little substance and even less replay value. With the storyline and visuals for After Hours, The Weeknd has put the art in artist. And with cinemas closed everywhere during an ongoing pandemic, he gave us blockbuster performances right to our laptop and phone screens at home, right when we needed them most. When discussing the magnitude and impact of modern day music, commercial success and numbers undoubtedly play a big role. Sales and streams certainly shouldn't be looked upon as the be all and end all, and the only verification as to whether an album or song was any good or not. But in this instance, the quality of the project has certainly been reflected in the numbers it's created. Before After Hours even dropped, Abel had managed to break a record. It became Apple Music's most pre-added album ever, where over 1 million of its users saved it to their library for instant access when released. Once it was available, it certainly went down a storm. After Hours provided Abel with his biggest first week of his career to date. In the US alone, the project generated 444,000 equivalent sales. This, at the time, was the highest selling first week of 2020. After Hours went straight to number 1 on Billboard's album chart and subsequently stayed there for 4 straight weeks. This being the first album to achieve that since Drake's Scorpion back in 2018. All 14 of its songs placed on the Hot 100 after its first week, 10 of which were in the top 40. Now every successful album needs a hit single, and things are no different here. Ever heard of Blinding Lights? Understatement of the decade, I know. It's become nothing short of a streaming juggernaut. In just over a year, Blinding Lights is racing towards 2 billion streams on Spotify. Not a bad return, eh? It's comfortably become Abel's highest streamed song of his career, beating out the likes of The Hills, Starboy, and I Can't Feel My Face, just to name a select few. In fact, it's currently the 6th highest streamed song on Spotify ever, which is an astonishing achievement in itself. The song went number 1 in a whopping 34 different countries, and just recently broke a record for weeks in Billboard's top 5 and top 10. I mean, numbers wise, it's undeniably one of the most successful songs of all time already, and that for me is the perfect way to promote your album. All the hard work had clearly paid off for Abel. To outsell his previous mainstream successes in 2016's Beauty Behind the Madness and 2017's Starboy was an achievement in itself, particularly in a pandemic where we've seen throughout album sales and streaming numbers are down across the board compared to those of before. This all bodes incredibly well for The Weeknd's career trajectory. It does make you wonder, what kind of numbers could Abel potentially produce on his next studio album, after the massive exposure he's received in 2020 and all the success that's come with it. The expectations bar, however, will certainly be set higher than ever before, but you'd be a brave and probably foolish man to bet against him. His record continues to speak for itself, and in this instance, the numbers certainly don't lie. In March 2018, The Weeknd released a surprise 6-track EP titled My Dear Melancholy. This being the first release from the Canadian since 2016's album Starboy. Abel then went on to further surprise fans in November of 2018, announcing that he was already working on his next studio album.
I want you guys to be the first to know that I'm working on my new album right now. Chapter 6 coming soon, let's get it.
Fans were very excited to see which direction The Weeknd would be taking things. After Sonically, the EP was more of a return to the trilogy days, compared to the radio-friendly feel throughout Starboy. What fans, and myself included, didn't expect, however, was that we would have to wait almost a further 16 months before Chapter 6 would be out. What 2019 did create, though, was a lot of hype. Anticipation and expectation reached new levels for this project, firstly down to the time taken between albums. Beauty Behind the Madness and Starboy were released in consecutive years, in what felt like Abel deliberately attempting to capitalise off the former's massive success, and continuing to ride the wave of mainstream exposure. But in this instance, Abel's silence and lack of activity for the most of 2018 and throughout 2019 was deafening. One thing's for certain now, it was absolutely worth the wait. The fact that he successfully managed to deliver a near perfect piece of work in my opinion, while taking his time and seeing expectation and demand grow and grow, underlines for me why After Hours is his greatest achievement so far. I find hype can often ruin a lot of albums, and not to the fault of the artist. Fans, particularly when having to wait a number of years, can big up an album so much that if it isn't deemed as decade-defining or a classic from day one, it's automatically a failure and therefore a waste of time. When in reality, people either just expected something different, or they allowed themselves to believe that the longer the absence equals the greater the masterpiece at the end of it, which unfortunately, many times isn't the case. It's these crazy expectations that's sometimes the only thing that's stopping people from enjoying an album for what it is. Whereas, if they went into that first listen open-minded and not expecting to be completely blown away, they'd probably enjoy it a lot more. In this case, however, The Weeknd gave his fans exactly what they wanted. A concise, well-sequenced album with the correct balance of radio-friendly songs and those of a darker, more vintage Weeknd feel. Fans of his more pop sound got Blinding Lights, In Your Eyes, and Save Your Tears, while those of Trilogy and beyond have songs such as Snow Child, Escape from LA, and Faith. Overall, the huge hype going into this album was impressively matched, something that these days, from a star with millions of fans across the globe, is far from easy to accomplish. Now, it hasn't just been fans who are impressed. The Weeknd has received some great critical acclaim for this body of work, and rightfully so, with many industry experts alluding to it being his most complete and best executed vision so far. It was named as Billboard's third best album of 2020, second place in Entertainment Weekly's top 15, and number 1 in Complex's Album of the Year list. As well as great reviews, Abel has already collected awards for this project. At the American Music Awards, he won Favourite Album and Favourite Male Artist in the R&B and Soul category. Blinding Lights also took home Best Song in the R&B and Soul category, completing a very nice hat-trick on the night. However, unfortunately, the first thing that will enter everybody's minds will be the infamous Grammy Snub. I still vividly remember watching the nominations get called out on Twitter and slowly thinking to myself, wait a second, where's Abel? I must have missed him. I think a lot of music fans had similar reactions, and like me, then went back to check the list, only to then realise he's nowhere to be seen. Somehow, not one single nomination. I think mind-blowing is the only phrase I can use here, without going off on yet another explicit rant for an extra 15 minutes on its own. I mean, in my opinion at least, it was absolutely nailed on that After Hours would be nominated for Album of the Year, and Blinding Lights would get nominated for Song and Record of the Year. Now yes, you can never trust the Grammys to actually give the award to the right person on the night. We know that from experience. But to not even be nominated? I mean, was and still is an absolute crime in my opinion. But perhaps this chapter will end with something far more spectacular than just a shiny record player trophy. This Sunday night, The Weeknd will be performing at Super Bowl 55 in front of a predicted 120 million people watching worldwide. Unfortunately, the stadium, however, will only likely be a third full due to the ongoing pandemic. After the run he's had, he deserved to be doing this in front of a packed out crowd there in the flesh, experiencing greatness during the game and at half time. But for Abel to even be given this opportunity to perform on one of, if not the biggest sporting and music stage of all, just truly shows how far he's come. During an interview released last week, it was confirmed The Weeknd has put in an eye-watering $7 million of his own money for this show in order to make it the spectacle he's envisaged. I personally think this show could be the perfect cinematic finale to the After Hours era, and what better place to do it. From all the way back to December 3rd, 2019, when we first got the video for the single Heartless, to this enormous performance now, Abel has created a truly special and unique experience. Now sure, he won't have that trophy in his cabinet this year, but what he will have is a legacy-defining chapter, complete with its own once-in-a-lifetime performance, cementing his name at the very top of the music world as the single biggest and brightest star on earth right now, bar none. And with that, I say cheers to you, Abel. Thank you for being one of the few shining lights for myself and every other fan out there in what's mostly been a year of darkness and apprehension. Thank you to everyone for watching. I hope you've really enjoyed this video and you've enjoyed it as much as I have creating it. If you could give this video a like and subscribe to my channel, that would mean an awful lot too. The links to my socials are also in the description below if you're interested in checking those out. But until next time, I've been Etienne, and it's goodbye from me.